Of all the billions of moments that make up a human life, there's one that ancient wisdom says holds more weight than all the others combined. It's not your first word, your greatest success, or even the moment you fell in love. Nope. It's the very last one.
So let's start with a really big question. If you had to pick just one single moment that defines your entire existence, what would it be? Just think about it for a second. Is there one that really stands out from all the rest?
Well, according to Buddhist philosophy, the answer is surprisingly specific. They teach that the most crucial, destiny-shaping moment of your entire life is your final thought. Yeah, that last little flicker of consciousness right before the end.
This whole idea is known as the last moment of mind. The thinking is that this final mental state basically acts like a launch pad, setting the entire trajectory for whatever comes next. If your mind is pure and calm, it leads to a pleasant rebirth. But if it's agitated or full of negativity, it can lead to a pretty unpleasant one. The stakes are, well, about as high as they can get.
So how does this all work, really? First, we're going to dig into why this one moment is considered so incredibly important. Then, we'll get into the karmic rulebook that supposedly determines our fate, look at the kinds of visions people might see, solve an ancient paradox, and finally, figure out what this all means for living a good life, and maybe having a good death.
All right, let's jump in. You can almost think of this final moment as a sort of final exam for the soul. The grade you get determines where you go next. But the scoring system isn't at all what you might think.
And this leads us to a really fascinating puzzle. I mean, if you've lived a good life, done a lot of virtuous things, that should guarantee a good rebirth, right? That seems logical. But what if I told you that according to these teachings, it's way more complicated than that? Check out these two stories from the scriptures that just seem to flip everything we'd expect on its head. First, you've got Queen Malika. She was known for her charity, just a lifetime of good deeds. But in her final moment, her mind fixated on a single lie she told her husband. That one memory upset her mind, and boom, she was reborn in a realm of suffering. Then you've got this gang of 500 thieves. Their whole lives were just crime. But right before they were executed, they sincerely upheld the 5 moral precepts for the very first time. Their minds were at peace, and they were reborn in a heavenly realm. How is that even possible?
Well, the answer lies in a really key idea. Not all karma is created equal. Not by a long shot. There's actually a very specific hierarchy, a set of rules that decides which of your actions gets top priority at the moment of death. So, this hierarchy has 4 levels. At the very top, with absolute veto power, is what's called heavy karma. Now, if that's not a factor, then the next most important thing is death proximate karma. That's the final thought we've been talking about. After that comes habitual karma, which is kind of like your life's default setting. And way at the bottom is minor karma, which really only comes into play as a rare tiebreaker.
Let's talk about that top level, heavy karma, or garu karma. You can think of this as an action so powerful it just seals your fate, no matter what else you've done. On the good side, this could be something incredible, like achieving a deep state of meditation. But on the bad side, it refers to things like the 5 heinous crimes, one of which is killing your own parent. These acts are considered so serious they just override everything else. A classic example of this is the story of King Ajatashatru. He actually killed his own father to take the throne. Now, later in life, he felt terrible about it and became this huge supporter of Buddhism, doing all sorts of good things. But it didn't matter. That one act of patricide was a heavy karma. It completely overrode all his later merits, and when he died, he was reborn in a hell realm. But look, for most of us, right, heavy karma isn't a factor. And this is where the second level of that hierarchy kicks in. Death proximate karma. This is where that final thought gets all of its power. So as a person gets closer to death, their mind is said to begin this process, sometimes called the mind's final slideshow. This process often brings up one of 3 different types of visions, and these visions are what shape that all-important final moment. Okay, so the first kind of vision is called kamaramana. This is where a really powerful past action, good or bad, just replays in the mind like it's happening all over again. A person might vividly re-experience a time they were incredibly generous, or on the flip side, a moment they caused someone a lot of pain. The second type is a little more symbolic. It's called kamanimittaramrana. This is where a person sees the tools or objects connected to their life's main actions. So, a doctor might see medical tools, a musician might see their instrument, a butcher might see a knife,
A devoted person might see the temple they always went to.
And then there's the third vision. And honestly, this is the most critical one. It's called Gadani Mittara Armana. And this isn't a memory. It's a direct preview of the next life. It's like a little sneak peek of the destination the mind is already heading toward.
And this final vision can go one of two ways. It can be absolutely terrifying or totally blissful. A mind heading towards an unpleasant rebirth might see visions of fire, dark pits, or scary figures. But a mind heading for a pleasant rebirth might see beautiful palaces, gardens, or celestial beings. It's this vision that really sets the tone for that final, crucial thought. Okay, so now we have all the pieces of the puzzle, right? We've got the karmic hierarchy, and we know about the pre-death visions. Now we can finally go back and solve the mystery of the good queen and the bad thieves. It all comes down to that hierarchy. See, neither the queen nor the thieves had any heavy karma in play. So the tiebreaker, the deciding factor, became their death-proximate karma. For the queen, her lifetime of good deeds, her habitual karma, was overshadowed by her final thought, that memory of a lie. For the thieves, their final good act completely overrode a lifetime of bad habitual karma. In both cases, the last moment won. It trumped everything that came before it. So this isn't just some ancient philosophy, it has some really deep, practical implications for how we think about life and death today. You could almost call it the art of a good death. And you can see this in action in a country like Thailand, where these teachings are woven right into the culture. Respected monks actively teach people how to prepare for a peaceful end. This philosophy has even shaped the law, giving people the legal right to a natural death to help ensure that calm final moment. And in practice, you see families creating serene environments for their dying relatives, maybe playing chants or reminding them of happy memories, all in an effort to help cultivate a peaceful final thought. As the well-respected monk, Fra Paisal Visalo, puts it, Buddhism teaches that if you face death with a calm mind or direct the mind to be wholesome, the mind can go to a good destination. It's just a clear, simple, practical instruction. So, when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? Well, the actions you do over and over again your whole life, your habitual karma, they build the foundation. They create the mental landscape where your last thoughts are going to pop up. But in the end, if there's no heavy karma in play, it's that one single final moment of consciousness that can tip the scales and change the whole game. And that leaves us with one last big question. If this very moment were your last, what thought, what memory, or what vision do you think would appear in your mind? It's a powerful thing to think about, and it kind of reframes how we might choose to live all the other moments leading up to that one.